Not everything should be pushed. So I'm going to give you an example here of what we thought was really exciting idea. This was published very recently. The idea is that you put this antenna array in the ceiling, maybe in this building or in this room, and the whole method has process has a way that if you have a device which needs charging, even if you're walking around with that device, it's a cell phone in your pocket, as long as that device pings this array and says, look, I need power, this thing actually sends power to that device automatically. So you can be walking around the room and it charges your device. Okay, you don't have to put it on a mat or, unlike other methods where it's fixed point, where you have to put it somewhere. This can happen while you're in the house walking around. But it's not commercially viable. Any thoughts why?
Power densities?
Yes. Matt, you're not allowed to answer.
Oh.
Okay, so there are two reasons which are both related to the same thing. Okay, it's the field intensity and the cost trade-off. If you don't want to spend too much on the array, you want to sell this as maybe a device you can buy in Best Buy, it shouldn't cost maybe more than 200 or 300 at most. It's a one-time investment. But that means less antenna elements, which means your energy is going to spread out. So the amount which hits a small device is going to be much smaller than the total energy. So to get enough energy into the device, you need to increase energy densities. What happens is you scare people. Okay, it's FCC regulation. Or you fry people along the way, right? So that's not a good thing. You can get what's called a pencil beam, which is a very narrow beam going to that device with not that much energy, but it will still violate FCC, although we believe it's not a health challenge that is, but it still violates the FCC regulation, and it's going to be very expensive. It's like creating a phased array radar, which, for example, defense does, but that would cost thousands of dollars. So the commercial requirement is low cost, safety, and fast charging. You want you don't want to wait 1 week for your iPhone to charge, right, as you're walking out. But the research prototype is high cost, unsafe level, and slow charging. Okay, so this is something. It's a very nice research project, but it's not going to make any money as a startup. Because that's one example of neat research, but absolutely useless startup. Okay, so this is where my interest in planes comes in. So here is a Japanese Zero, right, from World War II. But this is how it was given to me, with the front taken off. Okay, that's not going to fly. Okay, but startup people are really happy and excited about saying it's like building a plane while flying it. That's true for a startup. My point is we don't need to do that since we are at the university. So I don't know what these guys were trying to do here, but I don't think that's going to fly. And this is just scary. I have no idea. Hopefully it's not a robotic plane of some kind. Okay? So we don't want to do this when you're at the university. You can mitigate risk by doing a lot of this, building your plane at the university, and then fly it in the right direction. That's basically what I want to say. You don't have to have that heroic, I'm going to jump off a cliff and do a startup. You don't need to have that mentality at UW. So the idea here is that research is a marinade. It's a process where things seep in, there's juices flowing, there's things to change, there's salt to add, it's basically like doing a lot of cooking. And some things don't, some things come out burnt, other things don't. And so there is time, and there are resources at UW to let your research grow and mature, unlike startup times, which are measured in months. Here you can spend maybe a couple of years doing this. So the idea is you try out your really high-risk ideas, all of them at UW, and let the ones which makes more sense come to the surface. At that stage, you can talk about commercialization. So there's really no algorithm for success, unlike that first linear list I gave you. But we all know that any creative endeavor, whether it's a startup, whether it's research, is nonlinear, adaptive, iterative. You have to make a lot of changes on the fly. And so we don't want to shortcut that process. That will happen. And that's something that you need to do. Okay. So once the research is marinated, now you have a plane which is, well, I hope this is not your plane, but it looks airworthy at least. I don't know if you can control it. Okay. Now it's time to start your company and spend time and effort building this prototype which works. It's a working product. You pick the right people to fly it, which is your management team and your technical team, and then you've got to do everything correct. You've got to manage your burn, you've got to understand market, understand competition, make changes on the fly, change your product, change your business model sometimes. And this is a second sort of marination stage, which is at the startup. Okay, so I'm not trying to give you anything you don't know about startups or research, but I'm trying to show there are two different phases, which are both nonlinear and adaptive, but eventually they come together. So that's what I'm trying to show with here. Another point is don't get excited about money. Okay, choosing the right VCs is actually a very good thing. If you get the right money at the right time, there's nothing like it. But at the same time, don't raise money too early. That's a Superman costume, right? Yeah. So So why? Well, people do worry about valuations. You can get, if valuations are too low, if equity stakes are too high, then people do tend to get demotivated. So that's something to think of. Some of us don't think of this early enough. Okay, so that's something to, and you can lose, if you don't have the right investors, you can lose control and direction. And there's a tendency to start using the money once it's there. Okay, my clock is started. Let's hire. Let's start building out a sales team, research team. Let's get new offices in the Bay Area, right? So you end up trying to start doing too much. And there's a tendency to similarly do everything too early as opposed to the right timing. But again, I have to point out that the right timing for investment is invaluable. Without the multiplier effect of money, you're not going to scale up most often. This is something that, as researchers, tends to happen. You think of the new company as an extension of your research lab, maybe without the conflicts of interest, but here's another place to do research, right? Except it's nicer offices and it's got a view of the lake or something, but otherwise it looks pretty similar, same kind of cubicles, same computer, so let's do research here. Very bad idea. That's what the time at UW is for. People who fund you will not have patience for this, although the investors are good enough to realize, well, these are sort of strange researchers coming out to do stuff, but after a while it's time to focus on the product, on the market plan, business plan, the mythical business plan, right? There's so many discussions on what a business plan is. My argument is you have a full business plan once your company succeeds. Until that time, it's just a work in progress, which you need, but it doesn't mean anything until you start making money. Okay, so there's customer focus and, of course, milestone deliverables. It is, on this point, I want to mention, it's tempting to mix different kinds of funding, SBIR, which is equity-free, and VC funding. Now, this may not always be a good idea because SBIRs are great because they give you a leverage without losing any equity, but sometimes they can take you off on a tangent. And you can become an SBIR-only company, which is fine, but then if you mix that with VC funding, that's probably not okay. So I would say, in general, just be careful about mixing very different flavors of funding if you're lucky enough to get this. Now, this is well known to a lot of people, but we still do it, okay? Which is, you've got money, you've got a company, and you start hiring, right? And you look at all the org chart and say, well, I need a marketing person, I need a salesperson, I need a front desk person. But don't hire until, if you didn't hire, you would die, basically. Okay, so you try to do everything you can and then say, okay, I'm going to die tomorrow if I don't have someone. Okay, it's time to start interviewing. Okay, that's really the mindset you need to have. So the two people you do need are CEO and CTO, and these are not really interchangeable roles. People try to do both of them or say, well, I'll just pick one. Typically, a CEO has to be more outward looking, selling the vision, be good at talking to customers, and CTO is somebody who's willing to sit there all night, look at the product, and just improve it with his team. He's still a leader, but he's looking inward with the team. CEO is also a leader looking outward. So these two are really important. You need those. And maybe your company only has two people. Well, then call them CEO and CTO, right? That's it. They're leading themselves. Your tech team has to be handpicked and well incentivized, no question, because they're going to do all the work, and it needs to be small. It's very difficult to manage large teams, even if you have the money to do that. This is a mistake we all make when you get money is, hey, product is not selling. That means we don't have salespeople. Let's get salespeople, it'll sell. Not true. When the product is ready, it's going to sell. Once it starts selling, you get a sales team to scale it out. So getting a sales team too quickly is a very common problem, because then it's very easy to blame the sales team. Oh, the product is ready. Look, we have a sales team. We are incentivizing them, and it's not selling. It's all their fault, not the tech team fault. It's not true. You have to work together. And this one is unfortunate, but has to be done. Okay? We all make mistakes. It's in everyone's benefit, including the person you asked to leave, that you need to do this quickly so that they can go make a career rather than hanging around. Okay, so this seems heartless, but it has to be done in a startup. You should have a useful board, very important. Not just someone you want to do a favor for or a big name, but someone who's done it before, who has expertise, or who has the time. Time is very important, and also experience and context. So you really have to pick your board properly rather than filling it out with a set of names that you think will impress other people. Okay. Other things you can do with part-time consultants, typically you don't want a CFO if you want to do financial things, but I have a caveat there, which is don't use consultants in anything which is in your critical path. Why is that? Because they don't share your same founding team vision, passion, energy. In some sense, they're mercenaries. They're doing this for them, and that's their business model, and they have to do it. But they're not really incentivized. They don't have a large piece of the company. So don't put them in the critical path, because you shouldn't be blaming them. You should be blaming yourself for putting them in the critical path. And this one, I think, is really important. I don't know, I couldn't find a better way to put it, but these things which tend to be sort of soft or spiritual or whatever you want to call them is absolutely critical. Okay? Without these things, you're not going to succeed. It's really true. There's no algorithm saying, I don't really believe in this, but I'm going to do everything I can, and then once it works, I'll believe in it. Okay? That's not going to happen. You really have to push and have all of this happening, just like in any other endeavor, whether you're a sportsman, whether you're a researcher. These are things which are really very, very important. And when I say open mind, it means, yes, you have to be confident, but you have to be willing to make changes. If someone who's smarter than you or has done it before is showing you why what you're doing is not correct, you need to be able to move it as well. Okay, so that's number 10 on the list. So just to summarize all the don'ts, at UW, don't begin with the end in mind. Just focus on really good research. Don't try to do it all on your own. It's not worth the stress. But at the same time, don't think someone else is going to come and take your product and make money. These things happen, but don't expect that that's the normal thing. And of course, make sure you protect IP early on. Don't think every neat idea is a commercial success. So this is where you need to do your homework, talk to people, and understand how to play with limited resources. And don't start flying your plane until it actually flies. Okay, it's going to crash, right? We know that. If it doesn't fly, don't fly it, right? So that's why you want to do that at UW. Now, startups which are not university-based may have to do this. They may have to take this risk. But my point is here, you don't need to really take that risk at UW. Now, once you're at the company, don't use this as your research lab. Okay, this is where you have to change. It's like a switch. You're changing your state from research to business or to a startup. Don't do any research here. Be careful when you raise your money. Be very careful about hiring. Hire when you're going to die or the day before you're going to die. Okay, and wherever you are, you've got to push yourself. You've got to be excited about what you're doing. So there's no substitute for that feeling and that inner vision or inner intangible which is needed to get all this. So what I talked about was two sort of non-linear, messy, creative stages. One in the university, the other hopefully not too messy, otherwise investors will get a heart attack, right? So it's, but there's still work to do here. A startup is not an easy thing to make succeed. So there's a lot of brainstorming and work and adaptive things to do here, but also in your lab. These are two separate things. There should be connection between them, but that happens through someone who knows how to do that. So that's my recommendation, to work with people. And C4C is fantastic at that now. And so I think we should really use advantage, take the fact that we have them here to build this connection between two very non-linear and creative endeavors which happen at the UW side and the Nucleus side. They're both non-linear, high risk. I would say the research is more high risk, forward looking. You can get self-assessment and peer assessment, and it's a long time constant relatively for research. It should be, otherwise you're not really doing deep research, I would argue. You have less time in a startup to succeed. You need to be much more focused, and in this case, it's customers telling you that your product sucks, right? Not your peers rejecting your papers. So it's a slightly different model, but that's important as well. And these are two separate steps which should happen one after the other. Okay, and each is highly nonlinear. So to conclude, we are lucky to be part of a very highly ranked research university with fantastic staff, faculty, students, and resources and commercialization. So we need to take advantage of that. And to get to a company, if it's high-tech and IP-rich, with the right combination of UW research and C4C environment, that can be done as a repeated model with a significantly higher probability than just a standalone startup. And that's what we're trying to do, get the probabilities in our favor. Okay, no one can guarantee startup success, right? There's no algorithm, but we can start to build a process where, through having all access to founding teams, technology, investors, all the right mix in both the areas, you can end up getting startup success. So thanks for your time, and happy to answer any questions. What I'm hoping that people will get out of this talk is both to understand this two-stage process of research and startups, and how to do this repeatedly by working with C4C and taking advantage of all the resources we have here at UW.